Best program in the Big 12, best team most likely in 2020, bringing in the best class. Not good news for the rest of the conference. We got Jason Ray on the line from Last Word on College Football to talk Oklahoma. Of course, the Big 12 championship game coming up on Saturday, but there is final work to do to sign up and seal up this 2021 recruiting class. Jason, how you doing today?
Doing good. Yeah, it's a busy week with National Signing Day, the early period today, and then certainly the Big 12 championship game on Saturday. But yeah, it's exciting, good stuff going on right now.
So for some programs, they button up those classes early, and there's not a whole lot to talk about on the final day. But with Oklahoma, not necessarily some final news that we'll get in today, but as we were discussing before we started to record, some hot prospects that Oklahoma hopes to eventually track down.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma really has, Mark, they really have three guys, I think, that they're looking at that aren't going to announce today. A couple of them could be rumored to be silent commits, but they're, kind of using their platform to make their announcement. I think the first guy, we'll start with maybe the negative news for Oklahoma and then move forward to what looks to be more positive side. So Bryce Foster, offensive lineman out of Texas, has been, it's been between Oklahoma and Texas A&M for a while. His brother was an offensive lineman at Texas A&M, so they kind of got the legacy factor at A&M going. It looked to be a kind of a lean towards Oklahoma, over the last few days, but last few weeks, I should say, but things have kind of turned around a little bit today. He may be a silent commit to A&M because he is heavily moved on the 247 chart over to A&M. I think he's about a 95% lean towards A&M right now. He announces on the 18th, so on Friday. So Oklahoma should know pretty soon, what that looks like. But looks like a lean towards A&M right now. But from a positive perspective, two other guys, Tristan Lee, who is out of the Virginia area, who was really a very big lean towards LSU from time to time, as during this season this year. And I think just because of the season that really the season that LSU has had on the field, on top of Oklahoma may have lost out on the Bryce Foster kid, earlier than what the public has seen. So that's maybe trended him a little bit more towards Oklahoma. 5-star offensive lineman, kind of ranks a little bit above Bryce Foster right now. He's the 11th ranked national player overall in the country right now. So, the prognosticators from a 247 perspective have him around 59-60% lean towards Oklahoma. He will announce on January 2nd at the Army All-American game. Of course, they're not playing the game, but I think they're having more of a virtual thing. We're allowing kids to announce at that time. And the other one is Kamar Wheaton, running back out of Texas, another 5-star guy. According to Rivals, he's the #1 running back in the country. According to 247, #2 running back. So really, either way you go, another 5-star, 25th nationally, second best player in Texas. His recruitment is very strange, for this day and age, and some people may find it refreshing. He's very close to the vest. He hasn't really talked a whole lot, so there's not a lot of rumors out there that's been out there about him. But he is, at this point, based on the prognostications, almost a 100% lock to Oklahoma right now. So I mean, that would be a big get. You kind of wonder, kind of reading between the lines, what does that look like for some of the other backs? They're at Oklahoma. Ramondre Stevenson's a senior. Of course, he could, because of the 2020 eligibility rules, he could come back for his second senior year. Kennedy Brooks opted out. He's said that he's coming back. Doing that. Does Wheaton maybe know a little bit more than certainly we do as a public? Is Stevenson not coming back? It would be hard to, a good back like that. Sharing time at the beginning of the year. But I think the one thing Oklahoma fans they're probably a little bit nervous because this is an OU Alabama, head-to-head matchup here. But All signs seem to point to Wheaton coming to Oklahoma, and he will announce officially on the 23rd of December. So, and I know we'll get into the rankings and the class in a bit, but from a status quo perspective, if they're able to get those two last guys, and Tristan Lee and Kamar Wheaton that we talked about, that would elevate this team into a top 5 class, probably in the neighborhood of 3 or 4 at this point. Certainly, there's other recruits that could for some other teams that could elevate them, but I think if they're able to secure these two, it'll probably get them back to a top 5 class.
Yeah, right now, number 7, according to 247 Sports. And of course, with those leans coming Oklahoma's way, could mean a couple more spots. Number 1 in the Big 12. That's been a ranking held down primarily by Texas in recent years. So if Oklahoma's been able to produce the best program and team consistently, and now bringing the best talent, and again, that's not that it's been Texas year to year, but it's been a struggle between Texas and Oklahoma, and Texas many times gets that top spot in the Big 12, and Oklahoma, we see what gets produced and what the results are on the field. Jason Ray, last word on college football. Please join him and the rest of the staff over there breaking down college football with championship weekend coming up. Oklahoma, of course, taking on Iowa State. Lock it in here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Smash that like button. Hit the bell for the notifications once you subscribe. That way you know when we're going live. All right. I'll let you go carte blanche down the list of, we've got a 5-star. We've got 12 4-stars, and we've got 3 stars out of the class of 16 as it stands right now. So your thoughts about just what names draw your attention, and maybe not necessarily even at the top of the board?
Yeah, I think, Mark, interesting just to kind of capitalize on that last point that you made in terms of Oklahoma having the number 1 class, Texas traditionally having that number 1 class in the Big 12. I think what you're seeing, maybe more so this year than any year in the past, you're seeing that some of the success that Oklahoma has had, or maybe the lack thereof, that Texas has had, it's moving over on the recruiting. Part of that might be the uncertainty of Tom Herman at Texas. But, last I checked, I think Texas was somewhere around 16, 17 overall. And that's, for Texas, that's almost unheard of in the last, 10, 15, 20 years to be that far down. So I think, we'll talk about this in a couple of the recruits that OU has. I think you're seeing that translate. And maybe it was a little bit that the Texas AD gave that vote of confidence to Herman a little bit too late in the recruiting process, and with all the rumors about Urban Meyer and all that stuff going on, maybe hurt him in recruiting. So really kind of surprising from a Big 12 landscape perspective, seeing Texas so far down there. But
and Jason, not to cut you off, but from the Texas perspective, I don't know if that's going to bode well, or maybe that they bring in less talent and they're able to coach them up a little bit better. I don't know.
Well, yeah, no, that's accurate. It's went all the way back to when Mack Brown was there. They brought in top level talent. Of course, Mack Brown certainly had a better track record for producing, but with Charlie Strong and Tom Herman, they've underachieved, significantly. And maybe to your point, they bring in the less talent. It makes those, there's the thought process, but that the lesser talented kids, maybe work a little harder and a little bit more coachable at the college level. But yeah, kind of moving back into the names, I think, number 1 is going to be headlined by Caleb Williams, number 1 overall, dual threat quarterback in the country. Really has just been phenomenal, just in terms of in this differing year in recruiting, where it's been a little bit harder for the head coaches. He's arranged a couple of in-person sessions with unofficial visits to a couple of the Oklahoma games, the Oklahoma State game where they had a few, Tristan Lee, Kamar Wheaton as a few of those that have been there. So he's really the headliner, as the only 5-star at this point in the recruiting class. And, as weird as it sounds, I think he certainly will have a chance to compete for that starting job next year. Rattler's been really good, but at the same time, a number one quarterback in the country. He's talented for a reason. He will have that opportunity. He will come in the spring. Interestingly enough, his season was wiped out due to COVID. He's moved to Norman. He lives in Norman, so I'm not sure how much he's integrated with any of the players or goes to watch practice or anything like that. But just having him, in town and maybe on campus from time to time, really kind of bodes well for his ability to maybe be in a position to, compete with Rattler, coming into the spring. So he's the guy that certainly headlines. But from an offensive standpoint, Billy Bowman, who is, we kind of talked about Texas. He was a Texas lean, a Texas commit, decommitted in October, committed to Oklahoma verbally in November, and then obviously made that official today. He's really classified as an athlete, and he played wide receiver and defensive back. All signs point to him being able to play offense at the next level. He plays a little bit bigger than his size, number 38 overall pick. He's 5'10", 175. As we mentioned, recent decommit from Texas and came over to Oklahoma. And then if we move over to the defensive side of the ball, we'll look at a couple of defensive ends, Clayton Smith and Kelvin Gilliam. We've talked so much this year about Oklahoma upgrading the talent and playing so much better on the defensive side of the ball. And these are two kids that are top ranked nationally. Clayton Smith is 43 overall. Kelvin Gilliam is 104th overall in the country at the defensive end position. Kind of start with Clayton Smith, kind of the same thing. OU was in the battle with Texas. He was a heavy Texas lean early in the summer as the season started. Then he kind of went over to the Oklahoma side and committed to Oklahoma. Great edge rusher. One of the Oklahoma staff, Jamar Kane, had talked about him potentially being one of the game changers and maybe the biggest defensive recruit that they got this year. Really, he had a solid junior season, but really had just a phenomenal 2020 season that's still ongoing. I think he has a state championship game going on this upcoming Saturday. But 94 tackles, 20 sacks, 8 forced fumbles on the season. So he's really kind of elevated his play, and he may get to that 5th star by the time the season is over. And then Kelvin Gilliam, he equates to maybe he could play inside. He's 6'3", 250, has the girth and has the weight to possibly play inside. He's 104th overall. There was a little bit of a concern from an Oklahoma side that Notre Dame was kind of getting back into the mix with him, but he kind of shut that down last week on Twitter, talking about how he was 100% committed to Oklahoma and really obviously solidified that commitment today. And I think the only real surprise, I know coaches are when you're talking about 18, 19-year-old kids, you never really know what to expect. But Oklahoma hasn't had any surprises from a negative perspective. The one that they got that maybe they weren't 100% certain of was offensive tackle Savion Byrd, who he announced earlier this morning that he committed to Oklahoma over SMU. As we talked offline, really, it's not necessarily a recruiting battle that you would typically see, but things were leaning towards SMU's way. We our partner Tony Siracusa, who's covered SMU a little bit this year, earlier in the year with the UCLA hiatus early in the year. We had talked last night and earlier this morning. He was very surprised as well. Everything that he had heard was that he was leaning towards SMU. So he out of Duncanville, Texas, another Texas product that was able to go to Oklahoma, and 11th ranked offensive tackle in the state, could play guard or tackle. Interestingly enough, in his sophomore year, he played guard. He moved to the defensive side of the ball last year, and now he's back at the tackle position this year. So could play both positions. 62nd overall ranked player. So I think overall, I think kind of Sooner fans were a little bit nervous just from a lack of number perspective. There's only 16 commits at this point. Could possibly get to 18 or 19. I think there's some thoughts that Oklahoma may go the transfer route, the transfer portal route this year. They're seems to be tons of kids already making their names available in the portal if Oklahoma wants to supplement that with a few numbers. And of course, this is probably the strangest year from both a recruiting and a transfer portal perspective, because you have all these seniors, all these kids that can come back and play another year. So it'll be interesting to see not only Oklahoma, but just across the country, how they do that. And I think the NCAA at this point hasn't really provided what that scholarship limit looks like for next year, unless that's something that I've missed. But I think that'll be interesting to see what what team strategy is, not only this year, but in 2022 as they, kind of look to fill those needs.
Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football joining us to break down Oklahoma's National Signing Day report, which won't be completed until the first Wednesday of February, but a very excellent class at number 7 in the 247 sports rankings, number 1 in the conference. And again, as Jason outlined, if some leans go the Sooners' way, then it could be even better. Join my breakdown with Jason on the Big 12 championship game. You can catch it right here, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And of course, like this video and share them out on social media as well. And join Jason and the rest of the crew there at Last Word on College Football. All right, Jason, appreciate you stopping by and giving us the breakdown.
All right, thanks, bud. Thanks for having me on.